Are you wondering if your baby is ready to start solid foods? Maybe you've heard 4 months or 6 months or anywhere in between. Maybe family members are giving you pressure to go ahead and try to start solid foods, but you're not sure that your baby is ready. Today, I'll walk you through key signs that show your baby is ready to go ahead and start solid foods around 6 months. The first thing we're going to look at is timing. Most babies are ready for solid foods around 6 months of age. They start to show signs a little earlier than 6 months. It doesn't mean that they're really ready to begin until around 6 months of age. It's all about developmental readiness, so try to focus mostly on your baby and less on the calendar. It's also about when you're ready as a mom. Do you have the capacity to start feeding a 6-month-old, or do you need to try some foods at certain times? In this video, we're going to look mostly at developmental signs to know when your baby is ready, but in future videos, we'll look at how to really introduce those foods and what types of foods to start with. So the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization all recommend waiting until 6 months to begin this process. And I think that is the perfect recommendation. The old recommendation used to be 4 months. And when I had a 4-month-old, I remember thinking, like, how would you feed this? Like, they're just not developmentally ready usually to be successful eaters, and it can kind of make it more frustrating for the family who's trying to feed. So definitely wait till the 6-month mark. Also in college, my grad school project was like looking over research studies that talk about early introduction of solid foods. So introducing solid foods before 6 months. And when foods were introduced earlier than 6 months, so around 4 months, which is pretty typical if you're doing it before 6 months, babies tend to have more overweight and obesity issues later on in life. So even starting until 6 months can kind of help them with their long-term health and wellness as well. Next, we're looking at signs of readiness. So signs of readiness mean, what do you look for to know that your baby's actually ready? So here are our top milestones to look for. The first sign that we're looking for, or developmental milestone, is good head and neck control. This means your child can really sit up with assistance, but with very limited assistance. So they might be able to sit up with support and hold their head steady, but they also can sit in a high chair without your support. Like, you don't have to hold on to them to keep them upright. They can really do it on their own. And that's how you know they'll have good posture so that the food can move safely through the digestive tract, and that helps keep them safe while swallowing. So good head and neck control and sitting up with minimal support. When you're looking at a high chair, you want to make sure you've got something that does give them a good posture. They're buckled in for safety. They have a tray so that they can not only hold themselves up well, but also focus on what's happening around them and really draw their attention to trying those new foods. You also want a footrest. So the footrest will help them stay steady and help them to stay in that upright position. You want to avoid holding the infant. It's really hard to judge whether they can hold themselves up really well or not if you are holding them. And then they tend to wiggle and slip around. And so the high chair is going to be your best bet for making sure they can sit up, and they can sit up with minimal support. The next developmental milestone we're looking for is loss of the tongue thrust reflex. Now, when I say loss, I just mean it's getting less and less the more you put food in. So it's still a skill that has to be developed, but the tongue thrust reflex is when babies automatically push food out with their tongue. And that's because they're really used to just grabbing onto nibble and sucking. So they haven't really had to make their tongue work in the chewing or moving food around in their mouth way. By around 6 months, this reflex that they're born with to help them appropriately drink milk does tend to fade. It does start to fade. And so you'll start to notice they have less of the tongue thrust reflex. It's important to know, just because they still look like they have a tongue thrust a little bit doesn't mean that they're not ready. You want to notice the difference. Can they start to take food in their mouth and push it back and move it around in their mouth? These are the beginning steps of chewing, so they're still learning and getting used to it. It's not going to be perfect, but it shouldn't be that they just push food out of their mouth automatically every single time. Now, the first few times, yes, they're going to keep practicing, and they're going to need to get better at it. So don't get discouraged if you don't see the full loss of that reflex, but it should look a lot different, and it should keep getting better and better over the course of feeding the infant. The next milestone you're looking for is actual interest in food. And this varies by opinion, obviously. Like if a 4-month-old is walking by, I've mentioned this before, but like a cupcake, and they act like they want it. It's a vibrant colors also, so they're not really feeling like they're missing out on that cupcake necessarily. They're looking at the colors around them, and they might really want to reach for that. And that's totally normal. So they could have been reaching for your plate, reaching for your food also, and that's great. It doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to start feeding at 4 months, but you will start to see that interest peak over time. So around 6 months, they really should be reaching for your plate, trying to grab your spoon. This curiosity is a great sign that they're ready to sit there and give a little bit of attention to actually feeding. Lastly, we're looking for the ability to open their mouth for a spoon. Now, they may not necessarily be able to pick up the spoon or pick up food and move it to their mouth. That takes practice, skill, and coordination. They're just not going to be there yet, so it takes a lot of patience. Notice that a baby is ready for solids when they start opening their mouth instead of just instantly turning away. They don't need to put something in their mouth. They also put everything in their mouth for a while, so again, this is something you're kind of just looking for. It's not going to be perfect, and it's not always going to be one way or another. Around 9 months, babies start developing what we call a pincer grasp, which is just the ability to actually like pinch stuff with their thumb and forefinger, and that will help them pick up small objects, but they won't have that around 6 months, so they should struggle with like picking little pieces of food up. They'll more or less grab a handful and shove it into their mouth, and that's also a great sign. That's what we're looking for. Remember, this is a long process. Just because they're showing readiness signs doesn't mean they're going to just start eating and be great eaters at 6 months of age, right? You want to like introduce it at 6 months, but food is still on the back burner, and breast milk and formula intake is still the main priority at this time. I have this saying that's kind of accurate. There are circumstances that it could use some elaboration, but in general, food should be fun under the age of 1. So try to keep it like fun and encouraging, help them explore new foods. Okay, now let's look at a few things that don't count as being ready to start solid foods. Just looking around or having interest in certain foods at whatever age, it doesn't really count. A common myth is when babies wake up at night, they need more food during the day, and the food will help keep them full. Food will help keep them full, but it doesn't necessarily that they're ready to start solid foods. They might just need more breast milk or formula during the day. Maybe they have a growth spurt and they need more of that, especially if they're not around 6 months. Just waking up hungry doesn't necessarily mean you need to start introducing food to keep them full throughout the night. I'll see a lot of people do rice cereal, oatmeal in a bottle, or even by spoon at this point to try to get them to sleep through the night. And that's not really the goal. That's not why we want to start introducing solid foods. So I wouldn't start that just if they're waking up. These are normal baby phases, not necessarily readiness cues. Once your baby is around 6 months of age and you start to notice readiness signs like good head and neck control, being able to sit in a high chair with minimal support, loss of that tongue thrust reflex, and interest in food and interest in opening their mouth to receive the food, those are signs that your baby might be ready to start solid foods. It's always a good idea to check with your own healthcare team and your pediatrician, but this can be an exciting time for families. To give you even more peace of mind, we're going to look at what foods to start with in the next video, so be sure you subscribe so you don't miss that.